Good evening, Subrato. Wonderful to have you on the Digital Excellence Pharma Academy. So, as our audience can see, you've had a very interesting career. It'd be great to hear from you some of the highlights of your career and probably the key learnings in your many years in the pharma industry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Honored to speak to all of you. I spent a lot of time with predominantly Indian Pharma. I have hardly worked with multinationals. I started my career as a medical rep somewhere in 1986, so which is what, 35 years now, if you count the years, 35 years now. I was very fortunate. I always say that I've been always very lucky. I had the opportunity to work with specialty early in my career in a company, those days used to be called Farm Italia, which was the pioneers in anthracyclines. I got the opportunity to handle the oncology products as a frontline sales executive. We used to call them onco product specialists or something like that those days. And we were only 5 people in the entire country. And I was based out of Calcutta. So, I used to look after the whole East. So that used to give a lot of pleasure, traveling the whole of Eastern India, and then, of course, Nepal. So that was my first stint with specialty, and then I moved on to a company called Criticare Labs, based out of course, I joined as a zonal manager, and then I got promoted as a sales manager, moved to Bangalore. I worked there for as a sales manager, expanded the operations, consolidated the operations. Huge learning, huge. I would always be grateful to this kind of learnings in my life. From there, I moved to a company called Biologically. Biological E I brought me to Hyderabad. I was looking after the oncology and the vaccines business of Biologically. Then Dr. Reddy's. Dr. Reddy's really gave me a lot of learnings. It's a very employee-friendly organization, and that was a phenomenal period when we as a team moved from one milestone to the other. I used to head the oncology business there. From there to Dabur. Dabur was also a part of oncology. Followed by that, I worked with Strides, which took me back to Bangalore again and spent around 5 years with Strides as the president of the Indian. So post 2016, I have been an independent consultant. That's all about my career. My strength has always been my team. Even today, when I find all of them have been placed decently in the industry, nothing gives me more happiness than that.
Great. I think those are some of the similarities that we have. I also worked as an onco product specialist, one of the
Absolutely.
5 people in the country. And I think I worked a little while earlier before you in Criticare, which was also a huge learning point for me because I was based out of Bombay and had the Western India, which is Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, and parts of Karnataka I had as my territory. So, such a diverse region, you learn a lot. You're absolutely right. I think most of our learning happens when we go to different places, face different challenges, and that's why I think pharma working is such a learning experience more than anything else.
Absolutely. And even today, I mean, it presents with learning always. And that's what we are all trying to do even today.
So, coming to the COVID situation, Subrato, how efficiently did the pharma industry handle the COVID-19 pandemic, according to you?
Yeah. So I think this question is always in present tense, I guess, because we don't see a past of it. Even today,
Right,
while we are talking, is it very much present and in double its strength?
right.
Uh, but I must put a disclaimer here that I have not worked in any company. I didn't lead or work for any company during that COVID period. I was always an advisor, a consultant. So whatever I say may not be absolutely outsider, but a educated view, not a person who has handled it. So I think like every industry, COVID presented with its own challenges to the pharma industry. And especially when it is a disease, healthcare industry needs to be in the forefront. But there was, in addition to the disease, in addition to the infection, there were other geopolitical issues. The API, which we are so much so dependent on China, there was a huge problem in terms of import of the API. We are dependent to, let's say, 85% of our import from China. So that got disrupted. The supply chain as a whole, the logistics got disrupted. So I think pharma handled it extremely well. I would say. I think Indian pharma did a fantastic job. The global pharma did a fantastic job. We repurposed products. We brought in old products like favipiravir, like remdesivir, and many others. We managed our API challenges, our challenging issues of API. We recalibrated our sources, our API sources. Indian API played a big role in this whole game. Our margins were shrunk, but we never allowed the market to get to suffer. So I think India Pharma, again, logistics. There was a lockdown, as we all know. The country was under lockdown. The logistics part of it was especially hurt, but we ensured that optimum amount of goods were made available to the patient. And of course, not to talk about the vaccine. The vaccine is probably the biggest success of the global pharma, whether it is Covaxin from our own ICMR and Bharat Biotech, or the AstraZeneca getting manufactured by Serum, or the Johnson hopefully will be getting manufactured biologically. So these are great success stories, how efficiently we handled the COVID situation. Yes, we had our hurdles. Of course, we had our own pain points. Hospitals, the regular, the chronic treatments, the planned treatments took a hit. Everything was around COVID. Our field force, our frontliners, our frontline field force was finding and are still finding it extremely difficult to meet with the doctors and other key opinion leaders in the hospitals and everywhere. So that was a challenge. It eased out a bit, and I guess now it's even a bigger challenge. As an industry, we have handled our back end quite well. We have done our supply chain, our manufacturing, our repurposing, our R&D, our clinical trials. Everything we handled extremely well, but probably we could have done better in terms of adopting technologies for the front end. We could have innovated better ideas to reach out to the doctors and hospitals and so many other, the government institutions and everyone. I think we have lost 1 year, and we should not lose any more time.
I think you're absolutely right that the Indian farmer did a fantastic job when it comes to manufacturing the drugs despite challenges and even supplying the whole world with the wide variety of repurposed drugs, making it available at the local retailer and hospital levels. I think they did a fantastic job. But as you rightly said, they could have definitely done better in terms of interacting with the customers and doing much better use of their field force rather than just making them to do a lot of Zoom calls and WhatsApp calls, which have now received pushbacks, which is what I was talking to Dr. Mandar last week, and this is what he said, that that this is now reached this fatigue point, that unless the digital is really reimagined in such a way that the doctor has control over it, that he accesses it when he wants it, on which channel he prefers, the webinars have just outlived their utility. So this is another very interesting question, because you're a very commercial person. You understand pharma commercial, pharma business very much better. So is there any correlation between the equity market and pandemic? And has the pharma industry as a sector been rewarded? Because at all times they say pharma is a very all-weather worthy of being invested in. So what are your thoughts?
So, yeah, I mean, pharma doesn't have a recession. Pharma doesn't have a recession. But when you go to the money market, your performance, of course, gives you some kind of blue ticks. But what the investor likes is more of the story that you sell, the aspirations that you have, the changes that you drive. That will probably impact the profit line much, much bigger way than that 20 or 21% or 15%. So I think pharma in this pandemic, compared to all other industries which suffered, pharma from the equity market point of view has been profoundly benefited. If my numbers go right, I think from the market cap of pharma grew by more than 70% over the last 1 year. Now that's no joke, from the market cap of a pharma company. And this is skewed. I mean, this pharma market cap growth is skewed towards people who have a bit differentiated offerings, like the API offering, clinical development, the CDMO offering. We see a company called Deways has crossed 1 lakh crore market cap size. 1 lakh crore market cap size Deways had crossed during the pandemic. So we see a company like Granules doing fantastic. We see a huge number of companies who are, if it's just I used to work for Strides. So if you say Sequent Scientific, which is no more a strides company, but it was even 4 or 5 months back, they have been benefited by 150% in terms of market cap growth. So API has been tremendously benefited. As a whole, pharma has been benefited, but API has been very particularly kind of rewarded, and that's rightfully so, because we as a country, it's not for the pandemic alone, but we need to be self-sufficient, Atmanirbhar, in the words of our Prime Minister. But we are actually over dependent on China. It's not a question of dependence. It's a question of over. Anything happens, we are kind of in trouble. So I think it's a very good thing that our own API organizations, they are gearing up. It requires a lot of government support, which will take time, but we need to work on short-term objectives to change the API supply situation of our. The equity market has also helped a lot of formulation development companies. You see Dr. Reddy's, and even now after the Sputnik V approval, they have again benefited tremendously. If you see Glenmark, they have been benefited very, very well. So as a whole, if you see pharma companies in equity market has done fantastic, very, very good. And I think for all the work that the pharma industry has done during the pandemic and for all the hope, I think the equity market is all about believing in the story that you want to sell. So it's more to do with the EBITDA. It's more than the EBITDA numbers that matters in the equity market. So they have been able to show a sustainable vision, a sustainable story to the investors, and investors have subscribed to that.
Great. I think I really like that part where you said investors look for a good story and the business should be able to tell a story. And it's no wonder that the digital companies in the healthcare space have been able to tell a great story of how they will remove the pain of the patients. And they have, even in this difficult pandemic times, able to attract billions of dollars. And I think therein lies the opportunity for pharma companies to be able to tell a better story wherein they combine the pill with the services that patients and physicians would appreciate. Because there is a lot of gaps today in terms of not just information, but like accessing services. The doctor is too busy and the patient has too many questions. And if there is a concierge services that understands the patient's concern and offers that, I think the pill plus service is a good story to tell. I hope pharma will look at that going forwards.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So this has been a buzzword for a long time, Subrato, patient-centric medical marketing program. What are your thoughts and how can collaboration and leveraging technology enable pharma companies to be truly patient-centric, not just in their vision statement, but where it really matters, where the patient experiences, especially in a time like this, when even getting a bed, people are running helter-skelter for remdesivir. So what is it that pharma companies really need to do to become patient-centric medical marketing companies?
When a situation like this comes when we are in a pandemic, I personally have got at least 20, 30 calls, messages from friends and relatives saying that help us to get remdesivir. So I have tried my whatever. But the whole issue that is this patient centricity. This is something which is a must. My drug will reach a patient. My forecast will be enough. My productions will be enough to gear up the second wave or let's forget COVID for anything. That's the bare minimum that we should be able to do. That's not that I don't consider as patient. That's our duty. What are we doing in the industry? If you're not able to supply the medicine that we manufacture to the end consumer who is really requires it and for whom we do all these activities, reaching out to doctors, reaching out to pharmacies, to distributors, we do it all for the patient. Of course, we do it for profits, but we also and primarily do it for the patients. Otherwise, we don't exist. So the point of patient centricity is more to me is much, much, much more than that. I mean, there is no disagreement that these are very important and these are a must to me. This type of crisis, hoarding, black marketeering is no way what the country should allow. Forget about any company. But the whole point of patient centricity to me is when we design an organization and to think that what do we exist for? When we design a plan, what do we think? We think we are going to approach that market, we are going to open that territory, we are going to launch this product, we are going to buy this capex, we are going to improve, five manufacturing units. Have I, let's not say we, let's put it in singular, have I ever thought that we are going to reach out to 20,000 more diabetes patients this year? So, I mean, we do. We definitely do. We reach out. But is that in the plan? Today, with so much of health techs, startups, established companies, the large organizations like Google and Apple and everyone, they are coming out with several kind of gadgets, instruments to monitor health of people. Have we ever thought while we making a plan of the budgets or 5-year plan or building a company from scratch, shouldn't we think that we should collaborate with them and kind of find out the real problems of the patient? Is it that a drug which is really solving the problem? One. Two, when we launch a product, any product, we typically launch it after the expiry of the patent. And we depend on clinical trials, the data of clinical trials for the innovator, and we launch the product. Now, have we ever tried to develop data on our own brands? We have not. We today, let's say, take any brand, which is a large brand from an Indian company. There are crores of prescriptions which have already been written for that. We should very, very strongly start thinking of medical marketing programs. We should think of collaborations with health tech companies. We should think of collaborations with hospitals on a win-win basis. We should think of getting our own data. Reality of clinical trial is different, and the reality of the real world evidence is different. I think there's a huge need, and there can be a very, very winning story of pharma companies developing their own data on their own brands, on the patients that have been treated, and going and presenting that to the physician or the hospital. That makes a hell lot of a difference. The medico marketing. Now, this word medico has always been a surprise to me in terms of marketing, right? So I have seen, barring the inserts, correcting the correctness or, you know, checking the correctness of the inserts and signing on the LBLs and the literatures, I really have not seen we utilizing them well. Today, a group of efficient doctors who sit in the medical team of an organization, they should be able to lead this program. This program is not meant to be led by area managers and medical reps and regional managers. There is a completely different angle to this program where the doctor needs to understand the relevance of this. The doctor needs to understand the benefit of having documented the results of the patients who are put on these drugs. And that includes their lab results, their diagnostics, I mean to say the radiology diagnostics, and what else is required. Today we talk of a lot of things in the world. We talk of precision medicines. In oncology today, it is a buzzword called precision oncology. Are we really working towards that? Patient centricity to me is different. What we are generally talking of patient centricity is more to do with what we are not used to do. If you say that sending the remdesivir to the patient is patient centricity, I don't agree. That's our minimum requirement. Technology has improved, supply chain has improved, everything has improved. I mean, we have done it thousand. I mean, I as a medical rep, I'm sure Anup, you also have done it, like carrying a vial and giving it to a hospital doctor or a patient. I mean, that's not really a patient centricity. That's what is probably required. But the whole thought of collaboration with the emerging technologies, the collaboration with the institutions, the collaboration with so many other partners that are coming into healthcare with renewed interest. Today, tell me which company doesn't have interest in healthcare? You talk from Google to Apple to anyone, everyone is interested in healthcare. So I think this is something which is very important. Patient centricity is something that we have not done anything about in our country, in our industry.
Right. I think that's a great amount of honesty to say that. because our perception of patient centricity itself is actually stems from our business objectives and doesn't stem from being empathetic and appreciating the challenges faced by patients. Uh,
Right.
just think about the challenges that thousands of patients are facing during this COVID crisis, not being able to access regular health care for their chronic diseases.
Absolutely.
I mean, a chemotherapy patient, a cancer patient who has gone through maybe one or two cycles and now is not able to access the remaining cycles that he has to go through. Or a patient having a heart attack and not being able to go to the hospital because of all the restrictions that is over there. I think pharma companies have to transform and become healthcares where they have to map the patient's journey. When does he begin to encounter the discomfort, discover the disease, and all the way till he's able to say, I'm feeling better now? What is that journey? And at each touch point in that journey, create experiences for him that makes the doctor very happy because the doctor is not able to answer all those questions given the challenges that he has. And so I think patient centricity, as you rightly said, is going far beyond making drugs available till the last mile.
Just to add here, I was just in my social media, there's a very famous doctor in Delhi who has, in very strong words, slammed this decision of Delhi government to convert hospitals into COVID
Yeah.
hospitals. Now, well, that's also required. I mean, COVID is kind of killing thousands and lakhs of people. But how can we find out a way where the chronic, like you said, cancer patients, patients on chemotherapy, radiotherapy, how can they also continue to get their treatments at least? These are challenges. I think it's not only the industry, it's the government, the industry, the investors. Everyone should kind of sit around and talk and find out a way.
Great. As I said earlier, you're a very commercial savvy person. So one of the trends globally has been the predominance of private equity players.
Yeah,
Coming to play, people who essentially don't understand anything much about healthcare, but recognize it as you said, that it's a recession-free industry and a great place to invest. And we are seeing that trend catching on in India as well, as venture capitalists decide the structure of the company, the thrust areas for the company. So, where do you think, Subrato, this is heading towards, and how does it benefit the pharma industry?
so there are two things. One is private equity, and the other is venture capital. And the third we are not discussing today is angel funding. So, see, venture capital is something, as the name suggests, is something that you put a lot of risk, especially for a startup and things like that. So, typically, we see the health tech companies, they have a lot of venture capital companies where there's a lot of risk. The success of the technology, the relevance of the technology, the sustenance of the technology is really not very, very clear. So that's venture capital. And health tech has been doing so well that a lot of venture capital has come into health tech, lots. But coming to the core private equity business, during this pandemic, the record says that the private equity investment in Indian pharma has increased by 3.5 times.
Wow.
3.5 times. In this, I think the number till December was $1.69 billion. Till December, $1.69 billion from 600 million earlier, or some 400 million earlier. Yeah. So that's phenomenal. Now, let's see where are they invested. Again, I say that these are typically invested in companies who has a larger, it's not only a kind of a place where you sell, we say that I manufacture 10 tablets today, I'll manufacture 12 tomorrow and 14 the day after, so I require funding. No, it's not that. A large amount of investment has gone into Piramal. A large amount of investment has gone into Biocon Biologics. Biocon Biologics, not Biocon India. I'm talking of Biocon Biologics. Which they want to, I mean, Biocon Biologics, as per the last investment, has been valued at $4.17 billion. I don't think that company has done enough business. But this is the power of the story. This is the power of the sustainable story that Biocon Biologics is building across the globe. So, the companies like Carlyle, KKR, they are actually investing big in India, very, very big in India. We have Sequent, Carlyle investing huge amount of money, and that's where they bought out Mr. Arun Kumar's stake from Sequent. Arun is no more a part of, Strides is no more a part of Sequent. So, these are, and Sequent does what? It does API. RAChem, RAChem Pharma, again another company whom probably many of us have not heard much of. They have
Right.
drawn huge investments from private equity. So private equity, typical play is 3 to 5 years, they will exit. And in this 3 to 5 years, the valuation of the company will go up by at least 3 to 5 times. Just imagine that bet. Of course, there are failures. Of course, there are failures. But look at the bet private equities take and look at the kind of hope that they have on the Indian pharma. Now, with all these things, don't you think that these terms like our business is not growing, our doctors are not meeting us, our targets are not met, our stockists need to be dumped, all these sound very lame?
Right.
When you
Absolutely.
have billions of dollars coming from S investors across the globe into this specific industry, why are we facing this? So that's the core questions that the world has hope. Why are we losing hope?
So great to hear that amidst all this pandemic news, that there is hope for Indian pharma, that equity players are looking at Indian market with optimism, and they are willing to funnel in money at companies that have a story to tell, like you mentioned about Biocon Biologicals. So I think that should shift the attention from the pharma people that yes, the current model may be being disrupted, and for the right reasons, because all the objectives and KPIs and whatever the objectives that these businesses have, they outlived their utility in a new world. And as they emerge into the new world, I think they need to hear messages like this that will inspire them and hopefully work towards better healthcare for all. So thank you very much, Subrato. It's always a pleasure talking to you, learning new things from you. Look forward to interacting with you again. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Anup. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. Thank you.